puts out the CP. It's 2018 and we're on tour. It's about like fall going into winter, October, November. And we're coming up to Detroit. At this point, Jesse's worked with Eminem. She's had 2 records with him. And we're on the tour going into Detroit. Like, let me just call Paul Rosenberg, see if Eminem would come up. It's easy to say that, but like to muster up the energy to like send that text message to Paul Rosenberg and call or text is like a lot. You know, it's like pacing up and down a tour bus. I was drinking at the time. I don't drink now. Just take a shot before you go and do it. And you know, I send that text. I'm like, all right, sent the text on the phone away, put it there. 20 minutes later, I pick it up. He replies, and I'm like, and he says, Eminem doesn't really do that. He's probably not gonna come and do a special guest appearance at Jesse's show. But what about shooting a music video? Never expecting him to say that. Sure. And we did that. We ended up shooting a music video for a song called Good Guy. Take the name of the song. And it turned out to be a great video. Same director that did this on the Everywhere We Go directed that video. Awesome. Yeah, with Jesse, it was amazing. She like literally kills him in the music video. But you just never know, right? You just sometimes people stop themselves from doing something because they want to save the embarrassment. You know.
Have you heard the idea that right, people are afraid of no's, right?
Yeah. Well, why they're?
No, they are. But what if I told you you were 30 no's away from your yes?
Exactly.
How excited would you be for every no?
That was my whole theory behind the sales, right? Of knocking on doors.
Yes, that's it.
I'll get 90 no's in a day, but there's a yes at that 91st door.
Get the no's out the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Your yes is coming.
Was that the significance of building such a big catalog? Because some of these songs will be no's in a way.
Oh they'll be no's, but they'll be no's that add up over time too. You know, I think catalog for me. I mean, a lot of like my early
pile of clothes you never wear anymore. Turn them into
We'll get back to that. Shout out everybody out there. Tune in, turn up. You just listen to a little bit of segment.
You could get to 100,000, a million, 10 million monthly listeners on Spotify and not collect a single dime of your publishing royalties, and nothing in the system would tell you that you're doing anything wrong, right? It's on you to understand, wait a second, there's a different type of income stream that I need to be monetizing as a music creator, and it's on me to raise my hand and actually put in these song registrations and collect those royalties.
Shout out to the fans out there. Like, subscribe, share, comment. This segment is educating artists about
what is publishing.
So, music publishing is the business of making sure that songwriters get paid whenever their songs are played. Whether it's played on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube or a place like TikTok or Instagram, or if it's played in a concert, or if it's played because I went to a record store and I bought vinyl. All of those places generate songwriting royalties, and music publishing is the business of making sure that those royalties get to the songwriter.
Okay. And then what is the difference between then publishing and the recording?
Right, so that's a great question. The way I would break it down is that whenever you release music, there are 2 copyrights and 2 streams of money that you need to be collecting. And recording is the money for the actual record, like the production, the arrangement, the drums, the vocals. That is money you get paid by default through a label or through a distributor. The publishing is the money you get for the song, right? That's like the actual music and the lyrics. And the thing about publishing that's so difficult is that you don't get paid your publishing royalties by default. You have to actively raise your hand and navigate a system in order to take that money out of the system.
Right. And a lot of people will assume that like the publishing will get paid through their PRO, their ASCAP, or their BMI, right? But that's not the case.
Exactly. So I think a hard thing with publishing is that, you know, people have lots of assumptions and lots of misconceptions about how to take their publishing income and make sure that they're collecting it globally. One good start is to register your songs at your PRO. So like in the United States, that could be ASCAP or BMI. But it's not the whole picture, right? PROs generally collect directly in one country, and they might only collect one kind of publishing royalty, like in this case for ASCAP and BMI, performance royalties. But there are multiple kinds of publishing royalties.
And what are performance royalties?
So performance royalties are one type of publishing royalty, and it's generally tagged to the public performance of a song. So originally, performance royalties were because of the invention of like radio, right? Where it's like, okay, now people aren't buying records, but they're tuning into a radio station, and my song, my composition is getting played. Well, like, how am I going to get paid for that, right? Okay, well, we'll come up with something called a performance royalty, and we'll have these organizations called performance rights organizations, PROs, go out and license to the radio stations and collect that money and pay them to publishers and songwriters. That's one part of the puzzle. But then there are different kinds of publishing royalties that PROs like ASCAP might not capture. Like the second big type of publishing royalty is a mechanical royalty.
Right.
Totally different part of the picture and not collected by ASCAP, right? So I think the reason why songwriters who have real big, you know, songwriting catalogs and significant publishing money that they want to collect go to a global publishing administrator is to make sure that they're not just collecting one type of royalty in one country, but that they're collecting every single type of publishing royalty globally.
Yeah. So the way that I always learn about publishing is just basically, ultimately what it comes down to is the exploitation of a copyright and certain rights within the copyright, right? So one of them, well, you just mentioned two. There's the performance rights, and then the mechanical rights. What is a mechanical right?
The mechanical right originally was about, like, if you're actually making a mechanical reproduction of a song, right?
That's how far back this thing goes.
And, like, it literally goes back to things called player piano rolls. Whereas, like, you would literally buy pianos that had machines in them, and you would feed in sort of like these rolls of paper that would mechanically play a song. And what the songwriters and the composer said was like, oh wait, people are buying these rolls of papers. How do I get paid? That's the mechanical royalty. What's interesting about publishing is that it's such a confusing landscape of all these terms that almost feel like a foreign language. But when you go into the history, there's a reason why they exist. So the mechanical royalty was for literally the mechanical reproduction of player piano rolls and then later records. Like, you're literally using a machine to take a piece of wax and put a musical composition on it. That's mechanical royalty. Same thing with performance royalties. Okay, people are performing my song on the radio. I need a royalty for that. The problem is that when you zoom out to 2026, now the most important source is just streaming, right? And so we have this sort of complicated landscape of publishing terms, but at the end of the day, today, people are just going to Spotify and Apple Music or YouTube, and they're listening to music, but still those places pay both mechanical and performance royalties. Even though it's totally separate from what the original sort of like intention of those was, it's still a really important part of the publishing landscape, and it's incredibly complicated to navigate that landscape as a songwriter to make sure that you're just collecting the money that is rightfully yours. So again, that's what the business of music publishing is. It's to take a song and to say this song's being played and listened to around the world across thousands of different digital platforms, in live settings, in settings where people are going to maybe a vinyl shop and buying it. All of those royalties need to find a way to get to the songwriter, and our job is to make sure that they get to you.
And as long as I've been in this business, some of this stuff is still confusing to me. So like, and I love the way that you just explained it. Like, you broke it down very easy and digestible to understand.
Number one,
so I'm clear.
best person that
there is no
I've heard
mechanical in the master recording, right? It's only mechanical on the songwriting portion of it, correct?
Exactly.
Yes.
Traditionally, what would happen is that the mechanical royalty would be paid by labels, because if labels are selling CDs or vinyl, they're getting, let's say, $20 for the vinyl. They would then have to pay the mechanical royalty to the songwriters and publishers from the labels. That still happens today. If you go out and you buy a CD, not as many people buy CDs anymore, but that still happens today if you go to a record shop and buy vinyl or a CD.
And if you're on a label.
Well, the labels would have to pay it in that case. But the label won't pay you as your songwriter, your mechanicals, right? That's where, if you're a songwriter, and by the way, when I say songwriter, that doesn't just mean someone who only writes top lines and lyrics. A songwriter could be an artist who has published, who helps write their songs. It could be a producer who maybe isn't a vocalist or isn't an artist, but is contributing musical material to songs. Or it could be a pure songwriter who shows up at the studio and maybe comes up with top line melody ideas or lyrics. All of those different types of roles are songwriters.
What's a top line?
A top line would be like a melody. So like it depends, like often like in pop, you might have some songwriters and some of them are signed to us. You know, I work at Cobalt and Cosign. We have certain writers on our roster who mainly they show up to the studio and they help contribute melody and lyrics. They might not be beat makers, they might not be artists, but they're still part of the equation when it comes to publishing and songwriting rights. Anyone with a share of a song needs to be collecting their songwriting royalties in order to be making all of the income that should be theirs through their music career. So to your question about labels, that's a separate piece of the pot. Labels are signing artists and they're paying master royalties to those artists. Maybe they'll pay some points to producers, but they're not collecting songwriting royalties. And that's where music publishers come into the equation.
What you just said, this is like, then here enters Cobalt and Cosign. All right?
Absolutely.
So talk to
I'm
me
about to go over there, y'all.
Because it's a publisher. It's not one of the major three publishers, but it's up there.
Yeah,
Cobalt is like,
yeah.
It's as long as I've been in the business, I've always heard about Cobalt and the differences of Cobalt. And
I don't know if Kurt Cobain is on Cobalt, but I think I've seen one of his music
like,
on there. I don't know.
How do I say this? Like, it operates like one of those that is just like definitely for the songwriters. Like, it doesn't operate like a conglomerate. You know what I mean?
So Cobalt is interesting in that, first off, what is Cobalt? It's the biggest independent music publishing company in the world.
Yes.
So aside from the majors, Cobalt is the biggest music publisher.
I was just about to say they
built
bigger
its
than the
business in
label
like a
type
fundamentally
shit.
different way from the majors, because the majors built their business through acquiring ownership of copyrights, right? On whether that's on the publishing side or on the recordings, the master side. They sign artists, they sign songwriters, and they take a share of ownership of those songs. They've done that for decades and decades and decades, and now they're the majors. Cobalt built its business by being a services company and not taking ownership over songs, but just saying, hey, as a songwriter, I'm going to help you navigate this incredibly complicated landscape. I'm going to register your songs as fast, as directly as possible. I'm going to collect your money as directly as possible from everywhere around the world, and we'll charge an administration fee for the service of doing that for you, but we don't own your work. Maybe it's a 3-year deal at the end of which you could go somewhere else. And over the last 25 years, that's how Cobalt went from being like a startup to being the biggest indie. Like, we represent songwriters from Max Martin to Paul McCartney to Childish Gambino to Stevie Nicks to Karol G. We built up, I think, trust in that way.
I'm going over this.
But, I think what we do is fundamental to what publishing is, which is at the core, it's helping songwriters get paid when their music is played. It's more complicated than it should be. Our job is to make it simple and to cut out as many middlemen as possible and to just let songwriters earn the money that is theirs.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a little break. Because if you're listening and thinking, fuck, I could really use some guidance right now, and you're serious about building your career in the music industry, I'm now offering private strategy sessions. These are fully personalized, just you and me tackling whatever you need in your career. With over 16 years of experience working with artists, managers, and brands, I can help you map out your next moves. Now, whether that's structuring your team, scaling your brand, navigating the industry, even figuring out what steps to take, whether to go to a distributor or to a record label and figuring out what are the best deal points, I can help you with your career with where you're at. You can now book a one-on-one with me through my Calendly, and you can find the link in the description. Now let's get back to the podcast. So then talk to me about Cosign.
Okay, so Cosign is a newish service that we launched about 12 months ago. And the goal of Cosign is to take everything that we built in terms of Cobalt, in terms of the infrastructure of registering songs and collecting royalties as quickly, as directly, as efficiently as we can. And Cosign just puts it in the most flexible format possible for a new generation of artists and songwriters and producers who have real money to collect on the publishing side. They're really earning songwriting royalties, but they want something that's really flexible in terms of a deal. Okay. Because what we saw is that, there's this landscape where you have big companies with lots of resources, but they still generally have a pretty old school model of operating the business, right? Yeah. Where, maybe you're getting locked into a co-pub deal, or even a traditional admin deal where you're not giving up copyright ownership. It might have a longer term length, and there are a lot of artists, more and more, that we see, and not just artists, but producers and songwriters, who either, one, don't want a traditional deal ever. They don't need the traditional infrastructure. They are committed to being independent. Or maybe they might want a traditional deal at some point in the future, but they're just not ready for it yet. And the last thing that I think artists should have to do, and I've seen this, is sort of almost get like hustled into the wrong situation just because they feel like I need to cover this base and this is what's available, and now you've signed up to something that maybe won't serve you in the long term. So for Cosign, we just said, look, we'll create something that's super flexible, it's a rolling quarterly deal, but you can tap into Cobalt's global infrastructure for collecting your songwriting royalties. And that's really what Cosign is. It's a door to the biggest independent publisher in the world, but in a really, really flexible format. And it's also a selective service in the sense that, you know, we want to make sure that the artists and songwriters who are coming to Cosign are have enough money to collect that we can throw a lot of resources at making sure we're maximizing that income. So we're not being selective because we want to say no to people, but we want to just deliver a very high quality of admin service in a flexible format to people who are ready to take that kind of step with us.
What does that look like when you say to be ready? Is there a floor in terms of like how much the revenue is?
You know, generally I would say, I'll put it this way. I think that if you have $25 in publishing royalties to collect, there are lots of bigger services that you can go to that, you know, you pay $100 and you can sign up and they let anyone in and they have hundreds of thousands of songwriters. I would say that works if you have $25 to collect. If you have $2,500 or $25,000 to collect, that's where it's probably worth stepping up your infrastructure, and whether that's Cosign or another bigger publisher, that's sort of the more the zone that we'd be playing.
And it's important to note that because a lot of independent artists, because I feel like this is predominantly for the indie artist, the DIY artist, a lot of them believe that they're actually getting it from their aggregator, or their distributor, like their DistroKid, their TuneCore.
Sorry.
Go for it. No. Explain the difference here.
Here's the crazy thing about publishing is that you don't get paid your publisher royalties by default.
It's fucking nuts.
It's crazy, correct? Because your master royalties, you can't get music onto Spotify without going through a distributor, right? Without going to a DistroKid, a TuneCore,
exactly.
Even a more indie distributor, label services, or a label. You can't get your music on Spotify without that, and that distributor needs to pay you your master royalties. But here's the thing: you could get to 100,000, a million, 10 million monthly listeners on Spotify and not collect a single dime of your publishing royalties, and nothing in the system would tell you that you're doing anything wrong, right? It's on you to understand, wait a second, there's a different type of income stream that I need to be monetizing as a music creator, and it's on me to raise my hand and actually put in these song registrations and collect those royalties, not just in one place, but in literally 100 places around the world. And I think that's why the notion of like a publishing administrator is so important, because the truth is, if I'm a songwriter and an artist and I say, I want to just 100% do this myself, I'm going to collect all my publishing royalties myself, I would have to go, like the amount of money I would spend in like account setup fees at PROs around the world would be like $10,000. And I still probably wouldn't cover everything, and I'd be now spending a full-time job in trying to maximize my royalties.
Yeah, and when you're really a songwriter and like
you gotta be making music, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's where, you know, what Cosign does, what Cobalt has done for the last 20 years, is build an infrastructure to just say, we are gonna collect this money as directly as we can from DSPs, from streaming services, and we're going to be a single place that you can go, send in your music to maximize your registrations around the world so that you can collect the money. That's yours. By the way, this is your money as a songwriter.
So what money is being collected, and what is typically being missed in this scenario?
So what's being collected are global publishing royalties, which can be, you know, if you're an artist who's starting to build a significant catalog, we're talking thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands a year, right? And I think what's most often missed, I think it depends. I think that there are some artists and songwriters who honestly don't know publishing exists, and they're missing all of it. I think that there's a second category who, and this is, by the way, there's no shame in being in this category, who say, okay, I will sign up to my PRO, make sure I register there. It's a good starting point. You're still probably missing out on at least 50% or more if a lot of your streaming activity happens outside of the US, right? So this is where, you know, any artist, producer, songwriter who gets to a certain level, you notice that they tend to have publishers who are handling this for them. Yeah, it's not because they want to just have more deals that they're signing. It's because they want to maximize the value of the royalties that they're collecting, and that's where we sort of enter into the equation.
Right, because to your point, if you're signing up for a PRO at, say, an ASCAP or a BMI, they're only collecting in the U.S. and not collecting anywhere else.
Yeah, and I can actually give a little more detail on that.
Yeah,
because,
please.
so people ask, why isn't just signing up to ASCAP or BMI enough? First, let me say, ASCAP and BMI are important parts of the ecosystem, and they're important partners for us.
And SOCAN in Canada.
SOCAN in Canada, PRS in the UK.
Shout out Cameron Kennedy, my guy.
Shout out Canada. We got Canada representation in the building.
Yeah, absolutely, all the time.
What you'll find with the PROs are a couple things. One is that they only collect one type of publishing royalty, which is performance royalties, generally in the case of ASCAP and BMI. The other thing is that they only collect directly in one territory. So for ASCAP, that would be the US. They can sometimes cut side deals with other PROs called reciprocal deals, where they will collect, the UK performance from the UK society or the France performance from the France society. The issue there is that
SOCAN and ASCAP, exactly. To that point, yeah.
The issue there is a couple things. One is that every single PRO takes their own cut. So it can create a kind of a daisy chain of different territories taking their cut, which also slows down before it gets the money to get to you. Yeah. Time is money, right? So you have more sort of third-party middlemen. It slows it down, and often you don't get the best transparency. On your ASCAP statement, you'll see something that's like, international. So there's nothing wrong with always signing up to ASCAP first, but if you want to really address, I think, the global picture of publishing royalties, this is where you would go to a place like Cosign, for example, who is registering it directly everywhere, and also, where possible, bypassing some of the traditional PROs to collect more directly from just streaming services, where we have infrastructure in place that allows us to do that. So again, that's why it's not that, ASCAP, BMI, PROs are bad. They're really good, but it's just in order to really maximize global collections, not just performance, but also mechanicals, not just in the US, but also internationally, that's where a global publishing administrator can really help level up someone's business.
Why do you think that misconception is so common?
I think that the publishing system has become so complicated that in a lot of ways, people don't necessarily feel set up for success. So I don't think it's because there's any conspiracy around, just register at the PROs and you're fine. I just think that there are a lot of bases to cover.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the value of having a single place that you can go, submit your songs and your splits on the songs, and just say, go out and register this everywhere. That's where that becomes such a valuable tool for building up someone's business. So again, I think it's a misconception that comes out of the fact that the landscape is too complicated. It doesn't set people up for success to try to tackle it one by one by one. And I think the value, in my career of really representing songwriters, working at Cobalt, we launched Cosign, is to take this really complicated system and make people feel more empowered to take charge of their publishing, but also to simplify their setup so that they can just collect as directly as possible and send their songs to one place and then know that they're good.
So it's literally Cosign is, I go online, I log in, I put in the application, and then at some point I hear back whether I get accepted into Cosign, and then off to the races?
Exactly. I mean, if you're accepted to Cosign, getting set up can take 10 minutes, right? It's like, you get set up, you look at the Cosign sort of publishing agreement, which is a rolling quarterly agreement. It's not exclusive. You can get set up on Cosign and deliver one song and then decide, you know what? I don't want to deliver the rest of my album. That's totally fine. Obviously, you can leave on a rolling quarterly basis. It's just sort of set up to be a tool for people to deliver their songs and have the global Cobalt admin team do the work of registering around the world as directly as possible from streaming services that cut out those third-party middlemen and pay them quarterly. So exactly, it's a single place to go to have your songs registered everywhere, including, by the way, ASCAP and BMI. And if you are in Canada, SOCAN, we register at your home PRO as well, in addition to everywhere else around the world, just to maximize your publishing revenue. As a musician, the important stuff, which is writing songs, which is investing in your art, which is growing your audience.
What is Cosign's admin splits?
So our admin split is flat 80-20, obviously 80 in the favor of the artist or the songwriter, 20% flat admin fee for cosign. That is always at source, right? And that is the same in every territory. We don't make it higher if it's somewhere far away. We don't make it higher if it's a certain type of like performance royalty. We're going to double it. No, we don't do any of that. It's just the idea is to make it as simple and flexible as possible. So 20% admin fee for as long as you want to work with cosign. And
No other monthly fees or anything like that?
no, absolutely not. Yeah, we do not have a setup fee. We don't have a monthly fee. I think that's something that probably does differentiate cosign from some of the services that are open to everyone, which again, it's good that these services exist. I think it's important to have lots of options, especially for people just starting out. But for us, we don't feel like we should be paid a dime until we collect you money, right? We don't want to like charge you in order to pay you money. So yeah, it's, if you are accepted to cosign, it's free to join. It's also free to apply. And once we start bringing in your publishing royalties, our admin fee is just is the straight 80-20 split.
And as you mentioned, you're on a quarterly basis. It's not an agreement, but as you mentioned, if you wanted to, and I said, I don't really like cosign, I want to go somewhere else, or somebody's all of a sudden just giving me these incredible offers to do a co-pub deal or an admin deal with an advance with one of the majors or whatever it may be, I can take down my entire catalog and take it somewhere else, or can I not?
100%. That, in many ways, is the point of
why do y'all do that?
It's kind of funny because when we launched cosign like 12 months ago, and I remember having conversations with some high-ups in the building at Cobalt who were like, you know, are people going to take advantage of what we're building? And I believe a couple things. First off, you should have options as an artist. You know, if you get started on cosign and start building up your catalog, and then it's time to, you know, maybe move on to a more traditional publishing setup, power to you. We want to be part of that journey. I want to give you the keys to be able to navigate your career in that way. I also believe that if you do, and you probably know this also, like working in the industry, working in management, sometimes sometimes the best way to build a long-term relationship with someone isn't to lock them in, but to just do a good job, right? It's like, you know, we'll get you set up, hopefully you'll find value, and we'll stay. We've actually found that there's been very low like attrition rate so far. You know, we're a year in. But yeah, I mean, I think the problem that we're trying to solve is that there haven't been really flexible solutions out there that are also very high quality. And that's like core to what we're doing. Like the minute we have a really long term or something like that, then we're no longer providing that almost like USP and value to the industry. So yeah, that's just the, you know, it's like if you build it, they'll come. This was our bet that we took, which is like, I bet that there are more and more artists and songwriters who know that they need to be collecting their publishing, know that they want a lot of premium support in doing so, but also want a lot of flexibility. That's why we took this risk, and you know, we're very invested in it. It's growing very quickly. So yeah, I mean, it's not trying to go into, you know, like, you know, a hard pitch on this, but it really is.
No, I'm honestly trying to plug holes, like poke holes in this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's
having a hard time finding it.
I think that we're trying to look at the industry and solve like just genuine problems that exist. And for us, a genuine problem was like there aren't enough good flexible options. I think, you know, if you can solve problems for people, then I think you can build a good business.
It's a very rigid business, and I think one thing that you guys have really identified that I do appreciate is that, you know, not everybody's collecting just 7-figure revenue on their publishing every single. But there's a lot of folks out there who are collecting 5 to 10K out there on an annual basis that is not getting collected and don't even know it's just out there, right?
And that's life-changing money. And I know sometimes people laugh at that, but you know,
depending on who you are,
right, the difference between if you're an artist and you're sleeping on couches and you can collect another 25K a year that you didn't know were out there because of publishing, that could be the difference between you having to work 3 jobs and you now being able to focus on music more full-time. You know, we have people, you know, young producers and artists on cosign who have shares, not even necessarily big shares, but maybe small shares on Billboard top 10 songs.
On cosign.
On cosign, right? And
crazy.
It's crazy. And, you know, for them, it's like, before that moment happened to them, they were grinding, they were struggling, and then they realized, like, maybe if I turn on this income stream and see what's out there, this can make a difference. You know, even 5 or 10% on the Billboard top 10 could be 6 figures per year for multiple years.
Oh, yeah.
Just collecting that publishing money.
Yeah.
And the difference between collecting it and not is the difference between being able to make music full time and now you're still working those 5 jobs. And like, it's not just about money. Like, that's about culture. Like, if we can make, if we can take 2,000 more people in a year and allow them to make music full time, what are you unlocking in terms of what they're going to create and how they're going to impact culture and how they're going to inspire the next generation of kids behind them who are going to do it. So like, it's real, like, this is serious to us, right? Like, it's not just like, make some money, 80-20 deal. It's like, no, like, we want to move someone from struggling and not finding a way to make this work to realizing they can unlock income that will allow them to be full-time artists.
Speaking of publishing royalties, what are the main types of publishing royalties that are out there?
Absolutely. I would say there's generally 3 big buckets.
Yeah, we talked about 2.
Yeah, so we talked about performance.
Yeah.
We talked about mechanicals. Historically, they come from different places. Today, honestly, mainly they just come from streaming on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube.
Performance as well.
Exactly. Performance and mechanical. So it's important to collect both if you're a streaming artist, which I think most people are. The other big piece is sync royalty, which is a little bit of a different kind of animal. It's like if I have my song licensed on TV for an ad or TV show or a movie or something like that, then that would be a sync license, and there's a master side of that and there's a publishing side of that, and publishers help collect that as well. And then there are like the smaller, weirder kind of publishing royalties like print. If you go out and you buy sheet music, that's a print royalty, right? So those exist as well. All of those fall under the umbrella.
I forget about those all the time.
Publishing. That's the OG publishing royalty. Literally, publishing was like books. It was like 1800s. It's like, go out, buy sheet music. That's a music publisher. Obviously today it's a much smaller piece of the pie. But yeah, those are the most important types of royalties. And I think the tricky thing is that they're handled in different ways in different countries by different organizations and societies. And the global publishing administrator is who helps bring it all together and make sure that you're collecting all of it.
Which publishing royalties do most artists overlook?
For procurement managers, Granger is the go-to partner that helps keep your healthcare facilities ready for patients. Because there's no time to manage orders and deliveries from multiple suppliers, Granger offers everything in one place, from disinfectants to lighting, air filters, and more. All with fast delivery that helps ensure you always have what you need to put patient care first. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
All of it.
Which publishing royalties do most artists overlook?
I would say probably mechanical royalties, because I think that the PROs that are a little bit more well-known, ASCAP, BMI, in the UK it's PRS, in France it's SACEM, in Canada it's SOCAN. They almost become like institutions of the country that everyone kind of learns about. But I think the mechanicals are a little bit less well understood. So I'd say mechanical royalties number 1, and number 2 are really international royalties. Like, music and streaming is becoming more and more global, and often a smaller percentage as an American artist, often a smaller percentage of your overall streaming picture is coming from the US. So I think a lot of people don't think about, how am I going to maximize the value of collecting not just where I live, but also internationally. And I would say that that's a big piece of the puzzle that people often overlook as well.
Yeah, got you. Songwriters as well, kind of same thing, mechanicals.
Yeah, I would say that this is across artists, producers, songwriters, anyone who really is owed publishing royalties. And I would say sometimes producers in a way can have the hardest time with it, because I think sometimes producers get in the mindset of, I'm selling beats, I'll get an advance, and that's kind of where it ends. Maybe I'll try to get points on the master, but they might not realize, first off, I should be negotiating for publishing. If you're a producer and you're contributing musical material to a song, that's part of the composition of that song, and you want to be advocating for yourself to get publishing. And I think sometimes producers maybe don't think of am I registering these songs? Am I making sure I'm collecting these shares? Because as a producer, you're not necessarily getting a big check from the label. You're not necessarily getting a check from DistroKid. You might get your advance for the session or for the beat. And then really your publishing catalog is where you want to be building your residual business. And, it really is about building a business. I think that the beauty of publishing is that it compounds, right? You release 5 songs one year, the next year it's 10 songs, the next year it's 15. Each year, people are still listening to that music, but you're adding to it. And these royalties can really, really compound. And that's where we can talk about the power of ownership and the power of administration. Is not only is your songwriting catalog your body of work, and not only is it a revenue stream, it can over years and years an important asset. Where like that's where people start thinking really big about ownership and what's the legacy of this catalog. Is this something that I want to keep forever? Is this something where down the line when it's time to retire I want to sell, or I want to give it to my kids and my grandkids? You know, I think that the earlier producers can start thinking that way about their businesses, the more options they're going to have as they build their careers.
Important word that you said there, and I'd love for you to just break that down. What does compounding mean?
Compounding means that the value grows more and more as time goes on. Not just, oh yeah, another 5 songs, you know, $1,000 a beat, another $5,000. No, it's that the more you add to your catalog, if you're properly registering that catalog and you're collecting your songwriting royalties, and then you're adding to it, your income is growing not just like this, but almost like exponentially over time. And the key is time, right? Because publishing royalties don't last in the system forever, right? So when a song comes out, if you have publishing on that song, you want to find a way to register it, you want to add it to your catalog, and you want to make sure that you have your business street, that you have your data street, that you can see how much you're earning per year and how much you're earning every 3 years now, 5 years, and how that's increasing. Because as you get deeper and deeper into the game, especially as a producer, but also as an artist and songwriter, that catalog becomes something that you can leverage in a lot of different ways, whether that's, again, by selling parts of it, or whether that's by keeping ownership of it and having it be a really powerful income stream or something that you can give on as a legacy. So when I say compounding, I mean ownership, registering quickly, and allowing the benefits of your growing music catalog to become a more and more valuable asset over time.
So you would say then that there is meaningful money as a songwriter or a producer, even if you're not a famous artist, when it comes to...
Absolutely. Often, some of the people who have the most valuable publishing catalogs are not the biggest celebrities in the world. You know, at Cobalt, we represent a producer who I think is pretty famous because he's been so successful, but it's Max Martin, right? If you were to say, who's the most famous musician in the world? And you ask 10 people, they probably wouldn't say him, but he is one of the
his songs.
But you know his songs. And, you know, someone like that can build an incredibly valuable catalog. And again, as a producer and a songwriter, you know, you might get paid for a session, but that's, you know, it comes, it goes. The way that you build residual streams of income over time is by finding a publishing administrator, registering those songs, and building a publishing catalog. So I would say for artists as well, but especially for songwriters and producers, if you're trying to really build a sustainable living off of music, learning about publishing, learning about how to collect those royalties is absolutely like fundamental to just being able to have longevity in this business.
Let's say I got a hit record. Billboard Top 10.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What type of money could I expect?
On the publishing side?
Yes.
Obviously not every top 10 is the same, but I would say, you know, Billboard Top 10 songs in total at 100% share on the publishing side over 3-4 years are often hitting 7 figures, right?
Low, mid, high.
I think it depends on the song, but I'll put it this way. We have writers on cosign who are producers or who are songwriters who might have not 100%, but maybe 50 or even 25 or even 15 or even 10% of top 10 Billboard songs. And even just registering a share like that quickly, you know, not waiting too long since when the song comes out, you will generally see that you're generating maybe low 6 figures, maybe mid or even high 6 figures over the course of 1, 2, or 3 years. So it's unlocking a salary. It's unlocking not only a salary, but a pretty good salary. So that's where it's like, you don't have to be, you know, the Grammy winning artist whose face is on the album artwork to make real money. Even if you were just part of the puzzle of a really successful song, it doesn't have to be a Billboard Top 10. It could just be something that, you know, really had a moment on Spotify. Maybe it had 10, 50, 100 million streams. That is real income. That can be the difference between you struggling and grinding and all of a sudden like, oh, this is actually a pretty comfortable job. The key is you need to, 1, understand there's publishing in this.
Yep.
And 2, figure out how am I going to make sure I'm unlocking those earnings from the system where they're like locked up until I go out and get it. And that's where something like a publishing administrator, that's obviously what we do at Cosign, helps songwriters unlock money that should be theirs that they just need to get from their success.
So what you said, the sooner you do it, the better. Why is that?
So this is I think, a really challenging thing about publishing royalties, which is they don't stay in the system forever, right? At a certain point, if you wait 2-3 years, you know, the PROs, the streaming services, it's called unallocated royalties, right? They don't want to just hold and be sitting on that money forever. So at a certain point, they just liquidate it, quote unquote, and they might pay it out into things called the black box, where they'll pay it to the majors because they don't want to be sitting on the money anymore. So what's important to know, if you're a songwriter, if you're an artist, you're a producer, and you release a song, or a song was released that you have publishing on, you know, you can maybe wait, you know, a few months, but you really want to be on top of sending in that registration ASAP so that you can make sure that you're collecting the full life cycle of royalties that are associated with that song. So it's crazy. It feels like almost like you shouldn't be able to release a song on Spotify without you seeing like a public service like, yeah, there's publishing, collect this. Like, that's sort of what I'm trying to do right now. Yeah. Right. This would be like, hey, there is publishing money, collect your money. It literally belongs to you, right? Yeah. But that's when I say you don't want to wait too long, because I've seen lots of artists, lots of producers. Some of them, it's because they don't know about publishing royalties. Other times, it's because they say, you know, I'm just waiting on my big deal. Like, I'm going to get a giant check, a co-pub deal. We can talk about what that means. You know, I'm just going to wait on it. So I'm not going to register the song because I'm just waiting to get my big publishing advanced. And then what happens is, like, a year goes by, maybe 2 years go by, maybe 3 or 4 years go by, and like maybe that deal just for whatever reason doesn't materialize the way they think it will. And then all of a sudden you're looking backwards and you're saying, oh, there was $100,000 of royalties. There was $500,000 of royalties. Maybe it was just $25,000 of royalties. Whatever it is that I could have collected and I just didn't because I was waiting on the sidelines. So that's what I mean, which is I say, publishing royalties are your money. The best way to collect it is to be quick, and when the song comes out, just say, hey, I'm going to go to my publishing administrator, whether that's Cosign, whether that's a different company, and I'm going to make sure, hey, the song came out. These are the splits on the song. Here's what I control. Go out, register it globally so you can turn on that tab of royalty for yourself. Let's talk about the black box. So the black box is a really challenging part of publishing landscape. And what it means is, if you as a songwriter, an artist, a producer, someone who should be collecting your publishing royalties, if you don't go out and register that song to make sure you're collecting that songwriting income, and a certain amount of time goes by, the PROs... How much time? It's not the same in every territory, in every PRO, in every platform. I thought it was 2 years. It's generally 2 years, and that's what I would say, you know, don't wait more than 2 years. I think that's a good rule of thumb, but there is a little bit more complexity around it, which we don't need to get into. Sure, it's probably not that important. Here's what I'll say. You don't want to wait 1 year, right? Because if you wait past that certain amount of time, what the PROs or the streaming services will do is they'll just say, hey, you know what? We don't want to sit on this money. No one's claimed it. So we're going to put it into the black box, which means that in general, it will just get paid out to the major rights holders who can then do with it whatever they want. And when you say the major right holder, I'm talking like Sony, Warner, and Universal Music Group. And it will go to the artists that are on those labels. It will go to whatever those companies want to do with it, and they have different ways of distributing it. But the important thing is that it won't go to you as the songwriter when it's your royalty. And this is, I think, why it's so important for artists and producers and songwriters, and also their managers, and also their representatives, and also the people who are in their life trying to make sure that they are getting their business straight, to understand if you have writing credit on a song and that song comes out, it is a ticking clock. Right? Mm-hmm. You need to make sure that you are raising your hand and that you are submitting that song to every global registration society so that you can collect the songwriting royalties, and so that they don't fall into that pool of black box where they're just going to the majors. And it's kind of messed up that the system works that way. Like it sort of almost feels like if you could write a conspiracy theory about like the music industry, it's like, oh, if people don't know that they should be getting their money, then we just pay it to the major music companies. Like, that's sort of crazy. Yeah. But it's how the system is set up. And I think that's why we're so focused on education, for people to understand, hey, publishing royalties exist. Wow. If you are a songwriter, this is literally your money. It's not anyone else's money. It's not the major's money. It's not Spotify's money. It's your money. And also to build tools to just make it easier for people to unlock that money, so that it's not going to fall into the black box, but it'll fall into your bank account. How much money would you say is in that black box? There are different estimates. When we look at it, I'll put it this way. We think that there is at least $1 billion. That's billion with a B, of uncollected publishing royalties that aren't reaching the proper songwriter or producer or artist.
Annually or over the amount of time? Like, what do you mean $1 billion?
We think that at any given amount of time, right now there's $1 billion of unallocated royalties that are not being collected, right? And that is, I think for us, a massive problem, because who should be getting that money? Everyday artists, songwriters, producers. This isn't like $1 billion that's not making its way to, like, you know, a giant bank or to some rich corporation. This is $1 billion that's not making its way to working musicians, right? Who are sacrificing every day, grinding every day to refine their craft, to write better songs, to collaborate with other artists, to build their audiences. And there's $1 billion that belongs to them that isn't getting to them. And I think our mission, and my personal mission in this business, is to get people to understand that money exists. It belongs to you if you're a songwriter, and you need to learn how to take advantage of the tools available to you to just claim it and collect it. And it's not really trying to make it more complicated than it needs to be. Like, we can get into, here's the difference between performance and mechanical and sync, and here's the historical places they come from. All that's really interesting to understand. But I would say to an artist or a songwriter, to keep it really simple, it's just this. If you write songs, there is songwriting royalties that are owed to you. You don't get paid them automatically by default. So it's time for you to understand that there are tools out there for you to make sure that you're unlocking those royalties for yourself so that you can keep it moving and keep building your career. And at the end of the day, I don't want artists to have to spend their entire lives thinking about this, but they need to understand that it's out there so that they can collect what's theirs. And if we can shrink that billion to a much, much smaller number, like, then we've done our jobs.
When it comes to managing money, forget the hype and look at the results. Bill has $1 trillion of secure payments powering our bill pay tools. Instead of just moving money, Bill is powering the financial operations of nearly
smaller number, like, then we've done our jobs.
Fair enough. And I think, you know, what's important about this is just like, you know, there's motives, there's consequences, but really at the end of the day, what are the consequences, right? So, like, your motive, obviously, you're a business. You're trying to generate revenue as well. Like, I mean, that's just the reality of it. But there is a win-win situation here when it comes down to, because the consequence of it is like, cool, we're going to generate our 20% in revenue and through cosign doing this. But at the same time, you are now able to collect your revenue as well. You're 80% as a songwriter, right?
I think that's why we set up our business to, one, be aligned to songwriters. And you asked, like, why don't you have a fee to join? It's like, because we don't want to charge you to help you make your money. Like, we shouldn't get paid until we're helping you get paid. And I also think that that's why we structured it to be very flexible, because I think where the music business sometimes goes off the rails is when the companies sort of take advantage of the fact that maybe the artists who are signing to them don't fully understand the business, right? And so they'll say, hey, you know what, I'm going to help you collect your publisher royalties, or I'll help promote you on Spotify, or whatever type of service you can imagine. And then they sign up to something that actually locks them in for much longer. So yeah, I think for us, good business means providing a service that's useful, which is helping you maximize your global publishing royalties, doing it in a way that's fair. So, like, we get paid only when you get paid. The better you do, the better we do. And also giving artists flexibility to understand that, like, artists' journeys evolve over time, and the right setup for an artist in year 2, it might be different from year 4 or year 8 or year 15. And, you know, I think the more tools we can build that don't take away options but add to options is just helping to move the industry forward. And ultimately, that's how I think you gain trust with artists over time, is like not by taking away their ability to evolve, but just giving them a tool that's valuable and giving and encouraging them to evolve over time.
Yeah. I want to talk about a couple of other revenue collections, whether they're publishing rights or not.
Yeah, please.
Sound exchange, neighboring rights. Let's talk about sound exchange first. Can you explain what that is?
Sound
exchange. Is there
exchange,
publishing rights there?
Sound exchange is different from publishing rights. It's actually a part of a master right. And what it focuses on is master rights that are associated with public performance and broadcast in the United States. So traditionally in the United States, there aren't master rights or royalties that are paid from radio. That's actually a little controversial, and it sort of goes back to a lot of lobbying that was done like 100 years ago around the nature of radio royalties. But in digital radio, there is a master royalty that can be paid, and Sound Exchange is the organization that helps sort of cover that. Neighboring rights are a very similar type of master royalty. Again, it's not publishing. It's tied to the recording. And what it is, it's not in the United States, but internationally, when there is radio play and public performance, not, the publishers obviously get paid their performance royalties, often through the PROs and through publishers. But outside the United States, in many territories, there's also a recording royalty associated with the public performance that's called neighboring right.
That doesn't get collected a lot of times, too.
A lot of times it doesn't get collected, especially, artists in the United States who honestly don't really know that much about neighboring rights, because it's like almost like the little like weird stepchild of like the music business in the US. But if you're an American artist and your songs are getting radio play in Europe or in Asia or around the world, neighboring rights could be an important piece of the puzzle, and it would be helpful to find someone who can administer those rights for you as well.
Do those go into a black box as well if they don't get collected?
It's a good question. The truth is I don't know the answer. I wouldn't be surprised. I think in general, most of these organizations aren't trying to hold on to royalties that haven't been claimed forever. So they're probably some kind of liquidation process, I guess is the word you would use.
Yeah.
But the specifics of it, I don't know as much as
Well, you're still collecting all these rights and revenues and all this stuff. I mean, like, would you say that the system for publishing is broken, or is it just outdated?
I think that the system for publishing is way more complicated than it should be in 2026. And I think it's interesting, like, it's complicated for reasons that have to do with like legit things that happened in history, right? The invention of radio. Oh man, like, how am I gonna collect, if I'm a songwriter, how am I gonna get paid for that? Well, okay, performance royalties. The invention of the player piano back in the 1800s, or the invention of vinyl, right? Okay, now record labels are selling these things called records, but I'm a songwriter, I'm not the artist, how am I gonna get paid? Okay, mechanical royalty, right? So there are all these things that make sense, I think, at the time, and it's always the question of, if I'm a songwriter, how am I gonna get paid? And we've been answering that question in different ways over history, and that's created these different types of royalties. But again, if we zoom out to today, most people are really just, listening to music by going to YouTube or by going to TikTok or by going to Spotify or what have you, and it feels like it should be much more unified than it is. I think that the challenge for a 21st century publisher like Cobalt or Cosign is to take that complexity and to eliminate as much of it as possible. And to say, okay, rather than relying on a giant network of sub-publishers to do the work for us in different territories, or rather than relying on every single PRO around the world to collect everything for us, like, maybe we can find a way, since we're the biggest independent publisher, of striking more direct deals with the DSPs, with the Spotifys and the YouTubes and the Apple Music of the world. Maybe we can find a way of creating collection societies that, rather than being one, each country with a different one, maybe we can create a global collection society, which is something Cobalt did. It's called AMRA, where they just said, okay, streaming,
AMRA,
AMRA. Okay. And we're getting into like the weeds, and I love it.
Yeah, we have.
But it's like, that's part of Cobalt's history, was saying, okay, we'll strike direct deals with DSPs wherever we can, and we'll also create a global PRO called AMRA that will do its own direct deals with the streaming services, so that rather than having a really, really fractured, complicated publishing landscape, we can try to simplify, which does two things. One, it cuts out third-party middlemen in the collections chain who are all taking their whatever percent, and the more middlemen you have, not only do they take a percent, they also just slow shit down. It's like, it just takes longer to get to you. There's more chance for someone to make a mistake. There's more chance for a delay or an error that can then cost you money or cost you time. So I would say that the system is fractured, and that it's out of date, and that it's the job of modern music companies to make it less fractured, more direct, more unified, and to just give that data and that information to artists and songwriters and their managers and their lawyers, and to say, look, it is a complicated world out there, right? Like, to be fair, there are billions of transactions every day that are publishing transactions in the form of streams across platforms, across countries, across, thousands and thousands of different digital services. Like, that is complicated, right? To give the industry some credit, like, that is complex.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's our job to make it less complicated and to present it in a format for artists so that they can just leverage the technology that we have to collect that money. So I think it is an outdated system, and I think that, for us, it's not putting our hands up and saying, man, I don't know what we're going to do about it. I guess we'll just sort of charge an even higher royalty rate. No, it's building technologies, building tools, it's building systems to just do a better job. And like that's what we stake our business on, because as I said, with cosign, like it's a rolling quarterly term every 3 months. If we stop doing a good job, in 3 months our entire business would be gone. Right? True. It's like it could literally go from where it is now to zero if we aren't trying to solve these problems. So I think, you know, it's outdated, but it's also a challenge to the industry to do better and to just provide value in a landscape that is a little bit more complicated and complex.
Right. So we now know that there is publishing on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, your DSP. Is there publishing to be collected on Instagram, TikToks of the world?
There is.
Okay.
Cobalt has direct deals in place with Meta. That's like, you know, obviously Facebook, Instagram.
This is part of the global PRO?
With TikTok. No, these are direct deals that we have in place. Those bypass the PROs entirely. We were the first publisher to have direct reporting with TikTok, right? So even on those platforms, which we don't maybe think of as quote unquote music streaming platforms, there's music on them and there's revenue on them. There's ad revenue. There are different kind of commercialized places where people are listening to music, and that means that songwriters should be getting paid. So it's our job as a publisher to strike deals with those platforms to make sure that our catalog, our repertoire, our songs of our clients who we represent are getting paid when those songs are played, even on more of a social platform like a TikTok.
Is it like a blanket license? Like blanket license with them?
There are different types of licenses with different of the DSPs. Yeah. So some of them are more blankets, some of them are something that might be closer to what you would see at a Spotify. But the important thing for us is that if there's a new platform out there that's like has music on it and starting to really make revenue, that we're making sure our catalog is protected. And that's part of the advantage of also having a publisher, right? When we say, okay, Cobalt, we're the biggest indie publisher, it's not just to like beat our chest and say like, isn't that cool? It's because we have market share, and you can turn that market share into striking better deals with these platforms in order to make sure that we are like collecting the most money that we
Shout
can.
out to everybody out there. What's up,
Is there
man?
significant money? So like say I own like 50% of the publishing of a song and it's going crazy on TikTok. Can that be significant money that I'm collecting from that?
There could be real money you're getting from TikTok in there. And obviously that if it's a big song on TikTok, it probably also translate to the more premium page streaming services.
Show me like, here's my revenue from TikTok or Cobalt. Like if I'm going into that.
If you go into the Cosign portal, you can see your revenue cut up in a lot of different ways. It can be by territory, it can be by payment source, and it could be by streaming platform.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, in terms of the different types of deals in publishing, right? We're talking about co-pub, and we haven't even explained what a co-pub deal is.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'd love for you to explain it, and I'd love for you to tell me if you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to have a co-pub.
It's a great question. So first off, what is a co-pub deal? A co-pub deal is almost like the OG publishing deal. And really what it means is it's any publishing deal where as a songwriter, which that could be an artist or producer or songwriter, I sign to a publisher and they collect my royalties, but they also take a piece of ownership of all the songs I give them, right? Traditionally in a co-pub, they take half of the publisher's ownership of it, right? So,
which not to be confused with the songwriter owner.
Right. So
there's two sides.
Often in publishing, there's the publisher's half and the songwriter's half. In a co-pub deal, they basically take ownership of half of the publisher's half. So it's like often 25% of the total copyright.
Yeah.
There are also full publishing deals where they take ownership of the entire publisher's share, right? And that's where you're giving away basically 50% of your songs.
Which is fucking wild if you ever sign one of those. I'm sorry, I'm saying it.
Right? Now, so
you don't got to say it, but
so the question is, why do these deals exist? I think that traditionally they exist, honestly, because publishers are just trying to get as much ownership as they can. But, you know, in theory, is it a good idea? I'll give you just my personal opinion. I think that often if you're really early in your career, you know, when you sign a co-pub deal, what you're doing is you're selling low, generally. Mm-hmm. It's like we always say in finance, like you know, you want to buy low and you want to sell high. Generally in a co-pub deal, you're just selling part of your catalog just to get in the door.
Yeah.
And I think artists really need to think carefully about it. Now, it could make sense if you're signing to a publisher who maybe creatively, they're going to open doors, they're going to change your life, they're going to be a really meaningful advance, and they're going to help you get to that next level. Then you could make the argument, okay, now I'm selling part of my catalog, but they're really going to help me level up.
Yeah.
I think the issue is that a lot of the time, those things don't happen.
Right.
Right? So what you've really done is you've just kind of you've sold part of your catalog really early in your career, but you haven't really unlocked those doors that you thought. And I think that's where it's important for anyone who owns pieces of songs, whether you're an artist or producer or a songwriter, to understand there's a different option from a co-pub deal. And what that option is called an admin deal, administration deal.
Yeah.
And that really is sort of what Cobalt built its business on over 20 years, and that's what Cosign only offers by default. And what an admin deal is okay, I'm going to sign up, but I'm not going to give ownership of my songs. I'm just going to say, go out, collect my money, and I'll pay you a percentage for a certain amount of time of what you collect from me. But once that term is over, I can then take those songs and I can go somewhere else. And I don't have to leave 25% of it behind forever, right? So admin deals, I think, are best for artists who want to preserve their ownership of the asset that they're building and who want to preserve their optionality to be able to take that catalog and do something different with it in the future. So, co-pub deals, I'd say they're old school. I'd say it's selling part of your catalog probably sooner than most people would think. And it could maybe sometimes be the right move for you, but you really want to understand that you are going to get something that's going to help you level up from it. Mm-hmm. Not just that you're like chasing what you might think is a big check, but in reality, it's kind of just selling your catalog for pennies on the dollar, right? Mm-hmm. If you had kept that ownership and built that catalog over time.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other types of deals that publishers do?
So another key thing to understand is that there's a different option from a co-pub deal called an admin deal, or the full term is administration deal. And that is the type of publishing deal where instead of giving away your ownership, you keep 100% of it. And in an admin deal, what happens is that you sign up to a publisher, they'll go out, they'll register your songs, they'll pay you your publishing royalties, but only just for a flat, like a fee. It's called an admin rate or an admin fee. So maybe it'll last for a year or for 3 years, but the point is, once that term is over, you still keep ownership of 100% of your songs. You can sign that catalog to somewhere else. You can sell it down the line. You're preserving your ownership in your catalog, and you're just paying your publisher the way you would pay like a service provider, the way you'd pay, someone who's doing a service for you, but isn't necessarily taking ownership over all your creative work. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times when people think about, I'm going to do a pub deal, they almost by default just think, I'm going to have to, I guess, sell part of it, or, they'll take life of copyright, quote unquote, ownership over it. That isn't the only way to go. And the truth, Cobalt built its entire business by doing admin deals and said, look, there's a different way. And that's how we became the biggest independent publisher, was saying, look, we're not trying to own your, we're just trying to provide a service. Mm-hmm. Thanks for the service. And, if we don't do a good job, you can move on and still retain ownership of your catalog.
Jacob, I really appreciate this, man. Is there anything else that you think that that we didn't cover here? Because you really broke it down in a very effective way.
Thank you for having me. It's really great to be here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that we had a great conversation. I think that if I leave the audience with anything here, it's just to understand, if you write songs, there is a special stream of money that belongs to you that you don't get paid by default. You need to raise your hand. You need to make sure you're unlocking that income, and just don't leave that money on the table. It is hard enough to be an artist. It's hard enough to be a producer. It's hard enough to be a songwriter. I'm in this business because I came up making music and knowing that it's a grind, and it's literally your money, and it's up to you to go out and get it. And like for me as a publisher, I spent my career working at Cobalt. We co-launched Cosign. Our goal is just to help make that easier and to be a source of information for the whole community to just understand this income is this, it's yours. Just go out and get it. Literally your money. Yeah. So I'm just happy to be here. And
listen, man,
me.
No, of course. And listen, we all love Cobalt. We also love Cosign at the Manager's Playbook now.
Oh, hey. I didn't even notice these water bottles were here.
Oh, shit, look. Cosign water
That's a
bottles.
crazy coincidence.
Crazy coincidence that Cosign is on here now because they are, we can say, the official sponsoring, the podcast. So I appreciate that as well. But you know what? The truth of the matter is, and this is a reality, but like, even if you don't go with a Cobalt or you don't go with a Cosign, regardless if you go with one of the majors or whatever it may be, just collect the fucking money, because 100%. The publishing money is out there to collect.
That is the most important thing to take away from this. And I'm also we're genuinely fans of you. We're happy to be here. We're happy to be supporting. But beyond Cobalt, Cosign, Sony, any other platform that's out there, no matter where you are in your career, it's just helpful to learn enough about this to understand that you can cover the space, because it can change your life. Like, the difference between collecting this and not collecting this could be the difference between you making it a full-time career, leveling this up so you can support your family, buy a house. It's really just important to educate yourself enough to be able to take advantage of the tools that are out there. So I appreciate you letting us talk about it today.
I think the audience of the Manager's Playbook just leveled up, man. Thank you.
If you have writing credit on a song and that song comes out, it is a ticking clock. The black box is a really challenging part of publishing landscape. And what it means is, if you as a songwriter, an artist, producer, someone who should be collecting your publishing royalties, if you don't go out and register that song to make sure you're collecting that songwriting income, and a certain amount of time goes by, the PROs...
How much time?
It's not the same in every territory, in every PRO, in every platform.
I thought it was 2 years.
It's...
Shout out to the fans out there. Like, subscribe, share, comment, tune in, turn up. It's your boy jermincostor, Billions Entertainment. We dropping non-stop hits. We dropping non-stop hits. Yo, we'll be back after these messages. Let's go!